Welcome to Whole Heart Transformation. My name is Melissa Alguera, your personal identity life coach. Let's go to the podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, Dr. Debi Silber, founder of the PBT, Post Betrayal Transformation Institute, and National Forgiveness Day, celebrated annually on September 1st. And she is an award-winning speaker and a two-time #1 international best-selling author. Her podcast, From Betrayal to Breakthrough, is also globally ranked within the top 1.5% of podcasts. Her recent PhD study on how we experience betrayal made 3 groundbreaking discoveries that changes how long it takes to heal. In addition to being on Fox, CBS, The Dr. Oz Show, TED twice, and more, she's dedicated to helping people move past their betrayals, as well as any other blocks preventing them from the health, work, relationships, confidence, and happiness they want. I'm so glad that you're here with me today. Let's go to the podcast together. Hi guys, well, welcome today. I have a very special guest, Dr. Debi Silber. She is an expert in betrayal trauma, and she even has a wonderful institute where she helps people get trained in the healing from betrayal trauma. So welcome today, Debi. So glad to have you.
Oh, thanks so much. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, so I would love if you could just share with the people that are listening your story and what led you to help people with this particular trauma.
Yeah, I don't think anybody says, I think I want to study betrayal. No, you study it because you have to. I'm in business 33 years, health, mindset, personal development. Then I had a painful betrayal from my family, thought I did all I needed to do to heal from that. And then it happened again a few years later. This time it was my husband. That was the deal breaker. So I got him out of the house and looked at the 2 experiences thinking, what's similar? Of course, me, but what else? And I realized, I never really took my own needs seriously. Boundaries were always getting crossed. And I realized it's time to really make some changes here. I had 4 kids and 6 dogs and a thriving business, but I was in a jam. Like, I was really having a hard time. And usually I go to books or courses or something to help me heal. I couldn't find anything. So I just decided to study it at the PhD level and enrolled in a program and then did a study on betrayal. And honestly, I did it to help me heal and to be better for my kids and my clients. And that study led to 3 discoveries, which changed my health, my family, my work, my whole life.
Wow. Yeah. And I really can identify with the piece of having like a double betrayal and then like the next one really kind of waking you up and going, okay, I think I really need to look at this and see why this is happening in my life. Not necessarily that I've caused this, but why it is reoccurring. So I love that that's a part of your story, that you decided to look into that for yourself. Can you tell us a little more about maybe just the science of betrayal trauma specifically and how that impacts the person who's going through that?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, originally I was studying betrayal and post-traumatic growth. I always kind of like the upside of something.
Yeah.
And post-traumatic growth is kind of like an upside of trauma. Like that trauma, death of a loved one, disease, natural disaster, whatever, leaves you with a new awareness, insight, perspective you didn't have beforehand. Like you lose someone you loved, you realize life will never be the same, and you create these beautiful memories, whatever, right? But I'd been through death of a loved one and I'd been through disease, and I was like, betrayal feels different. And I didn't want to assume it was the same for all my study participants. This was actually the first discovery. So I asked them, if you've been through other traumas besides betrayal, does it feel different for you? And unanimously, they said it's so different, and here's why. Because it feels so intentional, we take it so personally. Right? So there's this total shattering of the self, rejection, abandonment, belonging, confidence, worthiness, trust. Like when you lose someone you love, you don't necessarily question that relationship. You don't question your ability to trust. You don't question your sanity. With betrayal, you do. So it's this complete shattering of the body, the mind, the self. It's the shock of it all. So the invitation, yes, is to rebuild your life. You also have to rebuild the self. When you do both of those things, you're in a new state called Post Betrayal Transformation, PBT.
Yeah. I love that, and I've lived that, so I know that it's possible. Can you talk a little bit more about the steps that it really takes to get to that post-traumatic growth in that?
Yeah, so it is post-traumatic growth plus rebuilding the self. Sure. So I think what you're referring to is the third discovery. So, and I'm happy to touch on the second one as well. But the third, for me, this was the most exciting. And what was discovered was that while we can stay stuck for years, decades, a lifetime, and so many people do, and I imagine the majority of your clients, that's where they are right here. If you're going to move, while we can stay stuck, like so long, if we're going to fully heal, we're going to move through these 5 proven predictable stages. And what's even more exciting about that is we know what happens physically, mentally, emotionally at every stage, and we know what it takes to move from one stage to the next. Healing is entirely predictable. And happy to go through the stages so you can hear them.
Yeah. Let the people know what are the stages.
Yeah, and everybody is going to know exactly where they are. When I say these stages, you're going to be like, oh, shoot, that's me. And a lot of people are going to find themselves in stage 3 because that's where most people find themselves and stay. Okay, so of course, this is all we do within the PBT Institute. It's what I certify all of our coaches in. Here's a boiled down version. Stage 1 is before it happens. And if you can imagine 4 legs of a table, the 4 legs being physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, what I saw with everybody, me too, was this heavy lean on the physical and mental, thinking and doing, right? We're so good at that. And kind of neglecting or ignoring the emotional and the spiritual, feeling and being, right? And so if a table only has 2 legs, it's easy for that table to topple over. That's us. Stage 2, shock, trauma, D-Day, discovery day. Everybody remembers their D-Day, right? And it's because we've had this sort of psychological earthquake. The world is now compartmentalized into 2 camps, before it happened and after it happened. And right here, we have the breakdown of the body, the mind, and the worldview. You have just ignited the stress response, and you are headed for every single stress-related symptom, illness, condition, and disease. Your mind is in this state of chaos. You're like, what just happened, right? It's like the person you trusted the most just pulled a mask off. You're like, what? And your worldview is your mental model, the rules that govern you, that prevent chaos. Trust this person. This is how life goes, right? And in one earth-shattering moment or series of moments, every rule you've been counting on and following, like, is no longer. The bottom has bottomed out on you. And a new bottom hasn't been formed yet, right? You remember your D-Day, right?
Oh,
like everybody.
I'll never forget.
Yeah,
You don't
right.
forget.
And that's it. But if the bottom were to bottom out on you, what would you do? You'd grab hold of anything or anyone in order to stay safe and stay alive. That's stage 3, survival instincts emerge. It's the most practical out of all of the stages. If you can't help me, get out of my way. How do I survive this? Who can I trust?
Yeah.
But this is the stage we get stuck in. Here's why. Once we've figured out how to survive this kind of shock and trauma, because it feels so much better than what we just came from, we think it's good, right? And because we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we don't know there's a stage 4 or stage 5, we plant roots here. We're not supposed to. And then 4 things start to happen. Everybody's going to know this too. We start like really getting these small self benefits. We get to be right. We like being right? We get sympathy from everyone we share our story with. We don't have to learn how to trust again. Like all these things. So we plant deeper roots. And now because we're here longer than we should be, now the mind starts doing things like, maybe you're not that great. Maybe you deserved it. Maybe this, maybe that. So we plant deeper roots. And because these are the thoughts we're thinking, this is now the energy we put out. Well, like energy attracts like energy. So now we start attracting people and circumstances and relationships to confirm, yep, this is where you belong. Like right here, we're going to join that lame support group that's going to keep us stuck. Like the in and awful club. Right here, we're going to heal and we're going to sabotage our healing because we're afraid to outgrow our betrayer who's not changing. Right here, we're going to go to some therapist, well-meaning, but not highly skilled in betrayal, and we're going to feel heard, validated, and understood, and we are not a step closer to stage 4. And we do that for years, right? And does this make sense so far?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I see it all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I bet you do.
Especially about the groups, right? You know, there's a lot of
Exactly.
groups out there that really just validate it and validate it and validate it.
That's all
No
you get.
growth, but they all kind of sit in the muck together. Yes.
You
Uh-huh.
get to be
Yeah.
validated. It's like, you ever see a bucket of crabs? You don't even have to put a lid on. They're so happy swarming around the bucket. Not so happy, whatever they're feeling. Right? And then
Right,
there's
right,
always
right.
that one hopeful crab like crawling up the side, and you always see another one grabbing it like, nope, if I'm not going, you're not going. And
Right,
that's what
right.
goes on. And now, because we're so miserable in this space, but we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we're like, I have to get through my day. So right here, we start numbing, avoiding, distracting. So we start using food, drugs, alcohol, work, TV, whatever, to numb, avoid, and distract. So we do it for a day, a week, a month. Now it's part of our lives. It's a habit, a year, 10 years, 20 years. And I can see someone 20 years later and say, that drinking you're doing, or that emotional eating, whatever it is, do you think that has anything to do with your betrayal? And they look at me like I'm crazy. And they say it happened 20 years ago. All they did was put themselves in stage 3 and stayed there, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And I
Yep.
imagine the people coming to you, it's the same thing. They're like, this stinks. I'm in this space for so many years, and it happened again and again. Well, of course it did, because if nothing changes, nothing changes. So people think, well, it's
Exactly.
just been so long. Clearly, time will heal it. No, it won't. And my research proved
Right.
it. Time won't heal it. A new relationship won't heal it. Healing heals it, period. Can I get you
Yeah.
into stage 4?
Yeah, I would love to. Yes, please
Okay.
do.
I don't want to leave people in stage 3. So if you're, that's
No,
the
it's
worst,
hell.
right? So if you're willingness is a big word right here. If you are willing to let go of the story and all it gives you, grieve, mourn the loss, bunch of things you need to do, you move to stage 4. Stage 4 is finding and adjusting to a new normal. So here's where you acknowledge, I can't undo what happened, but I control what I do with it. Just in that decision, you're turning down the stress response. You're not healing just yet, but at least you stopped the massive damage that was going on in stages 2 and stage 3. Stage 4 feels like if you've ever moved. Like if you ever moved to a new house, office, whatever. Your stuff's not there, but it's this sort of hopeful excitement, like we can do this, we got this. It feels like that. But think about it, if you were to move, you're not taking everything with you, right? You're not taking those things that don't represent who you're now ready to become. And what I found was there's this spot as people go from stage 3 to stage 4. If your friends weren't there for you, they don't come along. That lame support group, you're done. The betrayer who's not changing, you're done. The therapist who isn't skilled in betrayal and you're just, is cashing in on you going week after week, you're done. And people say all the time, what the heck? I've had these people in my life for so long. Is it me? Yes, it is. You're undergoing a transformation. And if they don't rise, they don't come along. So you're in this space, this new kind of mental, you're mentally home. You move into the 5th most beautiful stage. And this is healing, rebirth, and a new worldview. The body's now starting to heal. Self-love, self-care, eating well, exercise. We couldn't do that earlier. We didn't have the bandwidth. The mind is healing. You're making all kinds of new rules, new boundaries based on what you see so clearly now. And you have a new worldview based on the whole road you traveled. And the 4 legs of that table, in the beginning, it was all about the physical and the mental. By this point, we're solidly grounded because we're focused on the emotional and the spiritual too. Those are the 5 stages.
Yeah. I love that. And I remember first hearing about these 5 stages and thinking, there is hope for healing in this. Like, I'm not going to feel like Groundhog Day every day forever again. Like this will change. I can change this. I do have options. I don't have to stay stuck in that pain and in that gutter. And I remember specifically trying to join groups and seeing the differences between groups that had leaders that were healed. Their
Yeah.
conversation, their talk was very different. than the groups that were stuck in that stage 3 that you were talking about. Very different. They didn't talk about the betrayal. They didn't talk about the muckiness. They talked about how we're going to heal us, focusing on growing, focusing on boundaries, focusing on, knowing your emotions, naming them, and also inviting, God or whatever into that space as well.
Yeah.
And that was pivotal for me personally. So I love that you're sharing that. And that's where you actually can see that leap start to happen in your
Oh,
practice.
that's the opportunity. Like
Mm,
you didn't go through all that just to go back to what was. It's
yeah.
like you have an opportunity to intentionally and deliberately create this version of yourself that never would have had the opportunity to be created had that not happened. That's
Mm,
trauma well served. But what you're doing is you're looking at, and I'm talking every thought that comes in,
yeah.
and you're like, does this serve, does this belong to this new version of me that I'm taking? Like imagine packing and bringing stuff to a new space. If you don't love it, it's not coming along, right? So that's the work. And that's the part, there's a saying, I've been saying it 33 years of my business, and it's hard now, easy later. Easy now, hard later. Take your pick, it's one of those two.
Yeah.
When it comes to transforming after betrayal, it is hard now, easy later. But people say to me all the time, oh, but I've been stuck in this scenario for 30 years. It is hard. And I'm like, no, yes, it stinks, but it stinks because you're not doing the different things in order to have a different result.
Right.
But I want to touch on something you said also. You mentioned God, God, spirituality, whatever. That has a huge place in healing. And even in the study, it confirmed it. And it was really for two reasons. I saw a big move towards spirituality, whether that was the spiritual side of your religion, whether that was just spirituality, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really for two reasons. Number one, you feel so disconnected, right, from everything,
Yes.
everyone, and so alone, that it gave a sense of connection. And the other thing was with shattered trust, you can't trust the person you trusted the most.
Mm-hmm.
And then you don't even trust yourself. You're like, had I not say, had I not know? So if I can't trust in the person I trusted the most and I don't trust in myself, how in the world can I trust in anything and anyone? So we give that trust. We start that trust with something bigger other than us.
Yeah, yeah. And we need that, like, because we don't have all the answers and we need to be connected.
Yeah.
And disconnection is the biggest piece, I think, in betrayal trauma specifically, because now you're disconnected from yourself, your partner, and whatever else you thought your world was.
Yeah.
And so bringing that connection back in is just so vital. And I love that you're sharing that particular piece as well. It's so vital. I personally feel it's vital, no matter what it is that you want to connect to, like, do that, you
It's
know?
huge. It has such a bigger role than people think. And even we see it as our members move out of stage 3 and into stage 4 and 5, that gives them all of a sudden they're open, they're receptive to other ideas because, you've been cracked wide open. So when you look at it like, well, I'm just a recipient of betrayal, like what a missed opportunity,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But we see it as people move into stages 4 and 5. We see new businesses. We see new passion projects. We see new relationships, either with the person who hurt them in a very different way, or someone totally new. We see new levels of health. You need, spirituality, God, universe, source, whatever, plus healing physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. It's all of it in order to really take you over into those next stages.
Yeah. Yeah. I do have a question about this. Do you find, can people shift at all from 3 to 4 without that piece? I mean, I know it's not black and white, so I never want to be like rigid in that, but do you
Mhm.
find that more difficult, or can they still shift even without that piece?
I'll tell you, one of the biggest needle movers in moving from stage 3 to stage 4 is willingness.
Yes.
In the beginning, when I was doing the study as a researcher, you're not supposed to assume anything. Like I was new at this, I didn't know. And I assumed, I was like, the people who were the hardest hit would grow the least because they had the most to overcome. That had nothing to do with it.
Mm-mm.
Nothing. The
Mm-mm.
ones who put their heads down and they're like, I'm not picking it up till I'm out the other side, they blew the doors off
Mm-hmm.
of the people who were resisting. And I'll tell you, there were 3 groups in the study who did not heal. Can I share who those
Oh,
were?
yes, please. Love to know.
Because there are so many people doing these things, and I can promise you it's preventing you from healing. The first group, this was the group, they had their story, they were sticking with it. They refused to give up their story. These are the people, like you mentioned, in the support group, telling their story. You know how well rehearsed that story is. You hear it in the
Yeah.
way they say it. You know they've said it a million times,
Yeah.
right? Or that was just who they've become. They didn't heal. The second group, this was the group that was numbing, avoiding, distracting. This was the group who ran to the doctor who put them on a mood stabilizer or anti-anxiety medication. This was the group who was, emotionally eating, drinking, whatever. It may have made the day a bit easier to get through, not without a price. They didn't heal because they didn't, what we say in the PBT Institute, face it, feel it, heal it.
Yeah.
The third group, this was the group where the betrayer had very little consequences. So, they tried to look the other way, turn the other cheek, whatever it was. I saw 2 things with this group. Number 1, a further deterioration of the relationship. And 2, this group by far was the most physically sick.
Yeah. Yeah. There are 2 things that you said that stood out to me, if I can ask about this. So,
Yeah.
and I've seen this actually with some of the clients that come to see me, the anti anxiety medication you mentioned. I find a lot of people are numb when they are on that. Not always, but often numb.
Yeah.
Is that the piece that you connect that to, why they can't move from the stage because they can't feel?
They can't feel.
Yeah.
Like, that's why we say face it, feel it, heal it.
Right.
If you can't feel something, how in the world are you going to heal from that? But people are so afraid of that death and destruction of the old, that crash and burn, that dark night of the soul.
Right.
Yes, it's horrible, right? In that it's so painful.
Right.
But that's so beautiful because that's where you realize, wait a second, who am I now ready to become? What do I want? What am I doing with all of this? And if you have people, like if you have, people who are counting on you, or you have kids, or then you're like, if I can't even do this for me, let me at least do it for them. And you let that pull you enough out of those darkest nights until you can see straight and breathe. And then you take it from there. But if you can't feel, you can't heal. You just can't.
Right. And I think so many people are afraid of that, to feel. And I'm like, but that's where you're going to actually get traction. Like, grieve it, like, till it's all out of your body. You can do that. You're not going to die. You're not going to die, but I think a lot of people believe that. And that's what keeps them stuck.
I love that you brought that up about grieving. This is something I see all the time where, let's say, we have people moving through the stages and they've been doing really well. And then all of a sudden they're so sad and they are grieving and they're like, oh no, did I just set myself back? No, not at all. You're actually grieving because it's almost like you were in the picture and now you took yourself out and you're looking at it and you see it from a much different vantage point, and you realize, wow, that experience really is over. And now it's for me to rebuild myself. So it's a huge part of healing.
Yeah.
But everything goes in the right order. It can't be out of the, like, if you forgive too early, it's going to backfire every single time. Things go in a certain order.
Yeah. Can you speak a little bit more about that? The piece of grief, because this is something that I do find a lot of betrayeds don't understand, because they'll feel good for a while and then a date will hit, or they'll see a name or whatever, and they feel like they're right back in the pit. But I'm like, you're not in the pit. You're actually right where you should be. Can you talk about a little bit more of maybe how they can process through that when it does hit them, and to know it's not a setback?
Right. Well, and it all depends where they're at, because sometimes they're grieving and sometimes they're re-triggered, re-traumatized, and that means they're still working through stage 3. Because if you're truly healing, what happens is you could have the same trigger without the emotional charge. So you're going to know, that when you're reacting and responding differently, that's how you're moving through the 5 stages. But when you're, it's like early on, those triggers will take you down. They just, and even, we've had, 100,000 people plus take our post betrayal syndrome. quiz to see to what extent they're struggling. 94% deal with painful triggers. This stuff is real.
Yeah.
And what happens is, we think PTSD symptoms are just reserved for like war vets. They hear a car backfire and they're back there in battle. It's very much a part of betrayal trauma. We see something, we hear something, we think something, and our body reacts and responds as if it's happening all over again. So we have to get the body back online, and we have to, regulate the nervous system and do a bunch of things to do that. Very different if you're working with, you're rebuilding with someone, or even if you're doing this on your own. But grieving is a different experience than still reliving those traumas.
Right.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah. I think it's important because I think a lot of people cannot identify the difference, and you talked about the emotional charge, and I think that's really important to note, because that emotional charge is different from grief versus a trigger, and how it shows up is very different. You also talked about forgiveness too soon. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think a lot of betrayeds desire to just do that and think that that's going to fix it. But what do you find with that? How that kind of stops them from moving forward?
Yeah, and I believe strongly in it. I mean, the PBT Institute founded National Forgiveness Day. We celebrate it yearly on September 1st, so you can tell how much I agree with it. I remember in the study where they're reading a study that said, if you feel safe and validated, if you feel safe, what was it? If you feel safe and valued, if you feel safe and valued and you forgive, you feel better. If you do not feel safe and valued and you forgive, you feel worse. And I remember even upping it when I was doing my research, and I said, what would happen if we turn the word forgive into rebuild, like reconcile, right? And it would sound like this. If you feel safe and valued and you rebuild, reconcile, you feel better. If you do not feel safe and valued and you rebuild, reconcile, you feel worse. And that's what many people do.
Yeah.
But when it comes to forgiveness, forgiveness is along the same timeline as trust, which takes time. So when we choose to like, when we're like, this is just so uncomfortable, so painful, okay, fine, I forgive you. No. Or if we forgive for the wrong reasons, it backfires every single time, because we're not doing it because we feel safe and valued. We're doing it because we're afraid. We're doing it because we think we should, right? None of those reasons hold up to the body, mind, and heart.
Right. And it's almost like dismissing the reality of what has happened by throwing forgiveness in there and just trying to fix it that way, when it's really not that. And I love how you say that with the research, trust goes along with that. And I really value that, because I believe that, I always say that trust is like an empty bucket after you've blown it out from betrayal, and it's like a drop going in, that's all you get. For a while, you have to be willing to show up differently as the betrayer. You can't just expect that. But I see that a lot of betrayeds try to do that to mask the pain or deal with it in a way that's not helpful.
It's so true. I mean, and listen, we have a program for the betrayer as well, and I work with them, and I see there's no shaming or blaming, but I'm not easy on them either. And what's so interesting is it's such a beautiful opportunity for them to just become someone they're proud of, and they do. I mean, clearly, not every betrayer would even want to do a program or would be willing, but for those that do, they have the ability to transform, just like the betrayed. So for those people who are like, nope, once a cheater, always a cheater, like that whole thing, like I see it every single day. That's not true. That's definitely not true. So the opportunity is definitely there, but trust. I love your analogy of the pail, the bucket. I mean, I use a similar one, which is a brick wall. The only opportunity that I know to build a brick wall is brick by brick by brick. Every opportunity someone has to show that they're trustworthy, that's one brick in that brick wall. Right. And then let's say, they shattered the brick wall. The betrayed can stand there and be like, I don't have the least bit of interest in watching that thing get rebuilt. Totally fine. Walk away. Right? Yeah. However, if you're willing to watch that wall be rebuilt, that would be your role. The other person has to be a really good bricklayer, and it goes up the same exact way it went up the first time. But here's what I see. The wall is built. The betrayer shatters the wall. they don't really have much of an interest in rebuilding it. So the betrayed is like, fine, I'll build it. No. That's why they're hyper vigilant. That's why they get betrayed again. That's why they don't feel safe. That's why they don't trust. That wasn't for them to do.
Yeah, I like that because I do see that a lot when people come to me, and that's what they've been trying
Yeah.
to do. They've been trying to
Yeah.
build the wall. I'm like, but you didn't damage it. Like, they're the one that
Mhm.
damaged it. They have to do the work to rebuild that. And without that, you are trying to build with materials that you don't have, you know?
Yes,
So they have to do
exactly.
it. So Debbie, I love this piece. I'm wondering, can you speak to this a little bit more about maybe even, and maybe you don't want to talk about this, you threw it out there that you talked with betrayers as well. So I'm wondering with the
Mhm.
coupleship, are you able to talk about that, what you see,
Yeah.
and the perspective from, not the once a cheater, always a cheater as well? What do
Mhm.
you see in your
Yeah.
practice?
You know, it's so interesting. And also, just to close the loop on my story, so everybody knows my own story, healing and rebuilding is always a choice, whether you heal yourself and move along. That's what I did with my family. It wasn't an option to rebuild with them. With my husband, as two completely transformed people, we married each other again. New rings, new vows, new dress, and our 4 kids as our bridal party. I consider myself a bright woman, and never in a billion years would I do anything like that if, for sure, he didn't transform and me as well. So I know, from my own experience, but I also see, because I have the other experience of when the betrayer does not change. You don't have much to work with there. So in our community where we have our program for the betrayer, right? Very often we'll have a betrayer doing our rebuild program, our betrayer doing our reclaim program, and they're doing their own programs at the same time.
Mm.
And that's intentional because we have so many people also coming into the PBT Institute with counseling trauma, well-meaning counselors,
Yes.
but if the only intention is to get them both okay,
Mm.
they may say something like, well, to the betrayed, well, you need to communicate more. And the betrayed's like, are you joking? Right? So there's got to be this whole, it's about the self
Mm.
with, for the betrayer, what led them to make those choices that they made, and how to show up powerfully in a very different way for their partner if they have that opportunity. And for the betrayed, it's being willing to be receptive to that, but most importantly, move through the stages so any decision you make is from a place of strength and clarity versus scarcity and fear.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Like,
I remember kind of being in that too, because I also, in my story, we did heal our marriage as well. My husband completely changed. He did so much work. I did so much work. We did so much work apart and then came together. And I
mhm.
remember in the early stages trying to do this together. And I hated the therapists because they were requiring me to be vulnerable. And I was like, I do not want to be vulnerable with him. I don't feel safe with him at this point. We haven't had enough traction. And that was harmful at that time. I can see why they try to do that, but it doesn't work in the beginning, especially when there's that, your nervous system doesn't feel safe for a period
No.
of time with this person, and trying to emotionally connect is like, no, 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 you
And,
know.
and I'm so glad you brought that up. There was actually, I remember having a conversation with, in this case, she was the betrayer, her husband was the betrayed, and she was talking about now having to be vulnerable and open and forthcoming. And she said, well, what happens if he just attacks me for that? And I said, well, now you have a glimpse of the level of vulnerability your husband has to even be willing to take his broken heart that was shattered in a billion pieces and say, okay, this is the scariest thing ever, but I'm willing to have you work on this. Because it was so interesting how she was like, wait a second, what happens if I'm that vulnerable, right? And it was such a beautiful teaching moment where everybody on the call was like, oh, you
Yeah.
get it, we don't like. But then I have to say, like, I remember there was a, he was the betrayer, she was the betrayed. I am giving him the playbook of what to say, what to do, what to never say. He is writing notes. Oh, Dr. Debi, thank you. And then I'm on a call with the betrayed, and she says, I don't even know what's happening. He's like better than the guy I met in college. And I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
he's doing the work. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
beautiful when they both
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, I love those stories because they're not rare. Like I don't think that people understand this. There are people who are doing the work and healing.
Yeah.
And I think with the opportunities that we have, like yours was much longer ago than mine. Mine was almost 6 years ago, but even back
I
then
was
it didn't.
2020. Hold on, 20, the end of 2016.
Okay,
By
yeah. So
2017, I was in the PhD program study. The discoveries were 2018. PBT Institute was 2018. Yeah, it's around the same
yeah.
time.
So you've got traction and you've got rapport, how your marriage actually did heal or well, transform and redo,
Mhm.
or start over, basically with the same person. But I've experienced that too. And I love that there is hope out there because I don't think that people understand. A lot of people do heal, they do grow and they do heal, and a lot don't. But a lot do, and the opportunities we have to heal now are so much bigger than we used to have, for sure.
Oh, for sure. And I will tell you also, if it's not in your best interest to heal and rebuild, what we see so often when someone's in stage 5, who they get to meet, it's such a beautiful new opportunity. Like you don't have access to those types of relationships in stage 3. Like I remember there's one woman who comes to mind. She was in her mid 60s and she was settling. She knew she was settling. She was settling. And I was like, you know what? Let's just do this work, move to stage 5, and because I know you're going to see things so differently. And then she moved to stage 5. She moved through the stages, and here she was, and she met the most beautiful man. Like they had such a great relationship, and it was so funny because she said, he was a cone, and I was like, what? What do you mean cone? She goes, you ever see like parking spots and there's a cone in it, and when there's a cone, you can't park there. He was just a cone in my parking spot. I was like, that is so beautiful.
Oh, that is, and I agree too. Like, if you're growing, you don't tolerate the same things you did when you were in a different stage. You don't.
No way.
There's nothing there for you. It's like that's dead. So
Yeah.
to have new
And
stages, you're not going to be in that same place and be able to stay with somebody who's not healing, growing, and transforming as well. You outgrow them for
you
sure.
do. You
And
really do. And that's the risk and the reward.
right, right. I want to pull up my notes here really quick because there's something. So I want to tell them my story after I ask you to tell about this first, but we kind of talked about this
Yeah.
about I think it was the journal prompts that you did. Hold on, I know I wrote it somewhere. Well, I think you had said this. I had heard this in either a podcast or TED Talk or somewhere. I know I heard it somewhere, but you said write down like what your life will look like. I think it's in like 5 to 10 to 20 years if
Yeah.
you stay right here in this spot of, either stage 3 or 2 or even 4. Can you speak
Mhm.
to that a little bit more?
Yeah, I'm so glad you did that. And these are powerful questions. And I
Yeah.
do invite people to write them down. That's my way of saying write these down. Ready? So the first question is, am I numbing, avoiding, or distracting? If so, how? Right? You can't change what you're not aware of. So if you say, like you mentioned that person who's medicating, right? It's like, yeah, I'm medicating. Like, what are you doing? Or are you emotionally eating? Do you walk into the kitchen, you're not the least bit hungry, whatever it is? Like, what are you doing? Call yourself on it.
Yeah.
The second question, what am I pretending not to see? Ugh, that's a hard question. But am I pretending not to see that I'm just sort of in a holding pattern after this betrayal? Am I pretending not to see I'm terrified of growing because I may outgrow my betrayer who has no intention of changing? Like, what am I pretending not to see? The third question, what's life going to look like in 5 to 10 years if I keep this going? Play this out exactly the way you're doing it. Numbing, not speaking up, not whatever it is. 5 to 10 years, more of that. What does that look like for your health, for your relationship, right? What does it look like? And the fourth question, what can life look like in 5 to 10 years if I change now?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so good. And I wrote those and I was just telling my husband, I mentioned this to you, but I was telling him yesterday, I want to find those questions because I remember. And then I found them and I was like, oh my gosh, I remember this was actually a pivotal point. And I think it was year 2 of my journey where I was like, okay, I am actually holding on to things that are not serving me. I'm actually thinking things that are not serving me. I am doing things. I was the eater. I went to the kitchen, 1 o'clock every day. That's what I
Yeah.
did,
Mhm.
to numb. And it was just like, I was just automatic. I wasn't feeling, I wasn't dealing with anything. I was just automatically doing that. And I remember that pivotal point, and that was transformational for me. I was like, I do not want to be at this state in 5 to 10 years. I don't even want to be in this state next year. So
Exactly. And,
such
and
a,
and it's so beautiful that you did the work. I'll tell you, when you do this work, here's a big example too. We had a woman, she was in her mid 80s, and she had a 70 plus year gut issue. Like 45% of everybody betrayed has a digestive issue of some kind. So she had a 70 plus year digestive issue. She was adopted. They didn't tell her. It was like one of those things, right? So 2 weeks in our program, she healed from a 70 plus year digestive issue.
wow.
That's what happens when you do the work to heal. Yes, you can have your story and all that goes with it. You could be right, you could get sympathy, but look how much more powerful. Like, look at your story now because of what you've chosen to do with it. It wasn't easy, but
Yeah.
look at where you are now. That's the opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I love that story of this older person, because I find that a lot of people feel like it's too late for them to heal, and I'm like, it's never too late for you to heal. You could be wherever and still heal. You don't have to stay this way. You can grow, you can change, your age doesn't matter in this. So I'm so glad you
Not at
mentioned.
all.
Yeah.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, we've had many members, 60 plus, and it's even funny, it's never too late for anything. When I was even graduating for the PhD, I remember this guy emails me and he's like, "Oh, we're going to be graduating together." I'm like, "Oh, great, see you there." And he said, "Remind me of your name again. I'm not good with names. I'm 78." I'm like, 78 and getting a PhD, right?
Wow. That's
I'm
amazing.
like, "Go you."
Yeah.
But it's never too late. Never, never.
Yeah. And you'll feel better, in the end. You'll feel better with your life and your accomplishments, healing yourself for sure.
Oh, if I tell you how many people said to me, "You're going," because I went back at 50, and they're like, "You're going back now? That's going to be so hard. It's going to take so long." And I was like, "Yeah, but look what could potentially have happened, in those years. If those years are going to happen anyway,
Yeah.
like, why not?"
Yeah.
Yeah, people are funny like that. Everybody has their own way of doing things, and I would never judge what's right or wrong for anybody else. But I've seen in our community, in other communities as well, like, just because
Mm.
someone's been in a holding pattern for 30, 40 years, why does that now mean, okay, well, this is where I am, and I have to stay here because I'm older? Like, I don't even get the logic there.
Right. I don't get it either. But I think that, I don't know, I think maybe that generation didn't have the tools that we have now. I mean, we have so many resources now, which I understand. Like back then, even therapy back then wasn't as
Mhm.
acceptable as it is now. So we do have the tools now, and they still can heal, they still can grow, and they can move on and do whatever they want in their life. They don't have to stay stuck.
Exactly. Even, if I tell you how many times we see a new business being birthed when someone's in stage 4 or 5. I just heard from one of our members the other day. She was a financial person and she's opening up a wellness studio. Like,
Mm.
it couldn't be more different than the world she was in. But that's what happens. It's like all of a sudden you're like, wait a second,
Yep.
and
Yep.
it happens all the time.
Yep. That was my story. I did hair for 20 years. That was my career. That was the career I wanted. And then when this happened, and I was doing wedding hair and makeup also, like as a big profession. And then I went through the betrayal and I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like at that time, it was like too painful.
Right.
But then when I started to grow and heal, I was like, I think I could do coaching. I think this could be something. And I got into it and I was like, oh, this has like been a call that I had no idea
Yeah.
existed in me. And a lot of people will be like, oh, because you were a hairdresser, you already did that. But I'm like, no, actually, it's not the same. It's
Yeah.
not the same at
Yeah.
all.
That's amazing.
So you can totally transform your life, create something completely new and different. Now I do
You've
this.
done it, so you
Hmm.
can speak to it for sure, which is it's so great when people can see an example of this is what transformation looks like,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Good for you. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So Debbie, would you, this is kind of an off the wall question. I was thinking about it because I know for me, like I have kids, you have kids, and
Mhm.
you've walked this betrayal journey. What do you see, if anything, do you see anything with the kids on how the difference between healed people, and their children, work through this versus those that don't? Do you see any of that? I'm just curious.
I definitely do. And we actually, one of our coaches specializes in working, with managing the kids with this because they're betrayed as well.
Yes.
We see so many instances of the kids don't know, and so many of they do know. And I can only speak from my experience, which was my husband was the one who told my kids, and having them see us go through this, they have learned things they couldn't learn any other way. Like they saw me crash, but they saw me rise. And they had the work to do to rebuild a relationship, new relationship with him as well.
Yeah.
But, I think we want to, as parents, of course, we want to shield our kids from everything. But when you think about it, how did you learn your greatest lessons?
Yeah.
It was from going through stuff. Like I remember my kid would leave like their musical instrument home, and I'm like, can't take that in to school and help them, and it killed me. But they never forgot to bring it again, right? So, of course, we want to shield them, but I've found their kids are so strong and so resilient, and coming from a place of love, doing the best you can, and from a place of honesty kids can learn a tremendous amount from this. I mean, I can tell you now that we are now, as a grown family, same people, but nowhere near the same people. We're having so much fun. We're all so much closer. Like it's rebuilt, but so much better.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you're sharing your story in that, especially because you're on the other side. They're
Hmm.
grown,
Yeah.
and you're actually healed more together.
Hmm.
And I think that that piece kind of gets missed too, especially as betrayeds. I think that they're so afraid of what's going to happen to their children in
Yeah.
this. Even if they heal, that I think that there's a fear around that too. But there's
Well,
hope. Yeah.
oh, and I think, it has so much to do with communication. Like, how are you speaking about this? What are you saying? Are you addressing it? I'm not saying these conversations are easy.
Mm-mm.
And especially everybody with kids knows each one of your kids is different than the next and needs to be approached and spoken with in a way that resonates the most for them. But there's so much potential there. It's interesting because when we married each other again, I didn't want to have a big thing. Like I only wanted the kids there, and I wanted them there because, of course, like the kids and nobody else, because I wanted them to write something from their heart, and I had no idea what they were gonna write. But what was so consistent was the lessons that they learned about love, about forgiveness, about second chances, about change, and I was like, okay, all
Yeah.
right, trauma well served.
Yeah. You should be so proud, I mean, I would just like that would be like the most proud moment. Like we did the work, we've shown them the good, the bad, obviously shielding them from some of it because obviously
Yeah.
they can't handle it all, but
Hmm.
the fact that they could come back and have that perspective, wow,
Yeah.
that is so beautiful, so touching. Yeah.
And now they're all starting to get married and stuff, so it's a fun time.
Yeah. And I bet they're like emotionally equipped now, like more than ever, because you guys did so much work to actually even know what to look for and to know what kind of partner to pick and healthy and versus unhealthy and all of that too, you
They
know.
sniff it out from a mile away.
They
They,
do. Yeah. Yeah.
and it's so great. And even, and to see my husband coming around, early on, it was, you can imagine some really tough conversations. I mean, I don't have those kind of kids that they were all like, you did what to mom? They were not easy on him at all, rightly so.
Mhm.
And he's earned back, this new relationship in the way they need it. And again, here's the thing too, that wasn't for me to do.
Yeah.
That was for him to do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And that piece is so important too because it is his work to do. He has the bricks. He has the concrete. He has,
yeah,
all the materials to rebuild. And we can't do
exactly.
it for them as a
Mhm.
betrayed.
No. I mean, we never want to throw them under the bus if they choose
No.
not to, but it's not for us to rebuild. We cannot. Mm-mm.
Yeah, yeah, very important. Well, Debbie, is there anything else that feels important for you before we head out today that you just want to share? I mean, you are a wealth of knowledge, and like I mentioned early on, like you were a part of my early healing journey, and I'm so glad that I found you because I had no hope. You're just like, what is happening to me, my brain? What's happening to my body? Like, I don't even know what to do with this. I don't know myself. That is this trauma. It's true. It's different.
Yeah.
But is there
Oh,
anything you want to speak to or
yeah.
add before we head out today?
Yeah, I would say I know how painful it is. I've been through it, you've been through it, and I would say, to your audience, take a look at Melissa. That's what stage 5 looks like.
Mhm.
It's that, like I said, the 33 years of my business, hard now, easy later. Easy now, hard later, take your pick. It's going to be one of those two. Melissa did it, I did it, hard now. It was hard. Easy later. I mean, I can't speak for you. I'm having more fun now than ever.
Oh, same.
So,
I
it,
love my life
that's it.
way more. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
So I,
earned.
mhm.
It's earned, and that's the opportunity. And don't waste the trauma. Don't waste it. Don't waste it. It's available to anybody who's willing to do the work.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm so glad that you came on here today. It was great to talk with you. And if you would like to go to Debbie's Institute, I'm going to put all that information in the show notes and you can reach out to her team. And I love that they have a coach there specifically even for kids. You can get help for betrayed, betrayers, and the kids, and so much more, I'm sure. So thank you so much, Debbie, and we'll see you again soon. Bye,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
If you have enjoyed today's podcast, please like, subscribe, and share. If you're interested in coaching with me, you can go to identitylife.coach. You can also find me on Instagram, identity.life.coach, or you can find me on TikTok, identitylife.coach. See you there.